welcome to Criminologist et al. Convene. I'm Jen, and we're doing another little bite-sized snippet talking to assistant professor from Bridgewater State University in the USA. So this is our first American, and we've got assistant. That was terrible, wasn't it? Sorry.
Flawless.
Yeah.
Exactly how.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Assistant Professor Michael DeValve will be joining us today, and we'll be talking briefly about some of his seminal work. So a book that he wrote in 2015, A Different Justice, Love and the Future of Criminal Justice Practice in America. So without further ado, if you want to just give a brief introduction about yourself, and then I guess I'll go into some of the questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm Michael, and you've done a superlative job already. More ado than I deserve. I work at. I'm an assistant professor, as you said, in the Department of Criminal Justice at Bridgewater State University. I did master's and PhD at Sam Houston. Been doing this gig since, I guess, 2004. And my research focus deals with essentially justice and love, and has some relations to other things too, including police community conflict resolution and organizational capacity building and that kind of deal. But those things are all kind of wrapped around the love argument.
So with that being said, that's a great introduction. How exactly was it that you got involved in your nature of work? So you said you've been doing it since about 2004. How did you get involved in that work, justice and love?
I think from there are number of answers to that. One that I have to be. I think it's fair to point out that my first gig was working at a historically Black university in North Carolina, and it was the care I received there that allowed me, with my colleagues and my students and the administration, to find my understanding of it, find the place that I didn't see as being familiar to me in the justice dialogue. And so, people like Emily Lenning and David and Lisa Barlow helped encourage me to kind of ask the questions about why what do I contribute? Where do I fit to this conversation? And so it was that process that began as an article that was going to be a paper presentation that became an article that then became a book. And two events I think probably made that kind of crystallize. One was meeting my child. I was the first person to greet her when he was born. Mine was the first face he saw, and that I think when you could read all the Richard Quinney and Krishnamurti that and Gandhi that you'd like, but until you meet your child, I think it all becomes, it's all disconnected, and then so that love is living the world through a person. It sounds like C.S. Lewis, and effectively it is. Loving the world through a child is obvious and easy. And then I met my soulmate, and between the two of them, that they became the reason for the book. And in fact, my wife, Lindsay, I had to employ her for the book a little bit because she's actually my mother too. The two women, these powerful creatures, these powerful women in my life, my mother and my soulmate, both English people. Folks, English, mom's an English teacher, and she's a poet. My wife is a poet. I had to employ them to talk about how they understood love with regard to poetry. So, I interviewed them, and that was part of the book, was they weaved that into the narrative. And so to them goes a lot of the credit, because their nurturance was essentially why it was there. And my dad and my father too, of course. He's a hero as well. And so that their nurturance is what gave rise to the space that I was given to kind of invent, to find my place in the justice dialogue that I got at Fayetteville State. So I credit and love to my former colleagues there, and my family and my child. So.
Oh, that's really beautiful. And it's not often that I hear things like that, people centering kind of their journey around or their perspective around like love or you know, family and friends. So that's really beautiful to know that you've managed to embed that in like through your work and carry it through your work. And also, you know, that strength to share it, you know, because there's a lot of things that, you know, people, especially when it comes to love, just people keep, you know, within themselves. This question that I'm going to ask, I was actually going to ask a little bit later. Oh, sorry.
Wait, can I ask one more thing? One other point. I need to say this too. With regard to folks who you talk about strength, and I'm reminded of, and I need to point out how important two other people, Hal Popinski and Richard Quinney, have been with this, because of course, as peacemaking criminologists, they're the folks who kind of, you know, built the shop, but they're the ones who are brave, because they said things that were not well received at the time or were thought to be kind of marginal, and both of them have read works of mine and been fantastically encouraging. Richard reviewed both that book and then by 2018 book, and said wonderful things, and we've had an ongoing dialogue with Richard, and because of their strength, it's really their strength that you're seeing.
Yeah.
I guess that's
No, thank you so much for sharing that. And with that being said, and you know, we're on the topic of kind of, you know, you've conveyed that the journey, while it's yours, it's a shared journey. I'd like to kind of, from what I've got, what advice would you then give to other, you know, up and coming criminologists, or criminologists that are already kind of established? What advice would you give them if they intended to kind of follow your career trajectory of putting out some research and publishing books, etc.?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. First is, you know, I think you really have to be willing to listen to those kind of, you know, Paul Tillich talks about ultimate concerns, and each of us carries a set of questions, and how you navigate those, you know, fundamental, maybe frightening questions about, you know, I mean, theodicy is one example, but there are many, right? How you navigate those, and how you confront, like, what's the purpose of my being here? And I think if you're willing to ask those questions and really find those answers, I think then you're able to produce and do so in holding yourself gently, right? That larger truth becomes self-evident, and then being willing to just write for it, because there is nothing really else. That's the gift that we give each other, right?
Yeah.
I think, and you know, and as cliched as it sounds, we talked about cliches earlier, and I was just writing up my reappointment narrative, and hanging my hat on cliches, because my wife tells me I'm a walking Hallmark card. You really, self-care is vital, but that, and I don't mean that in some kind of, you know, granola kind of Birkenstock way. I'm talking about authentically engaging with your suffering. I mean, is it from a semiological perspective? If you're going to be a healer, and I think that's what we're called to be in criminology, and I tend to take that as being semiology. If we're serious about that, that means we have to heal, physician heal thyself, and then to begin to kind of percolate that out into the world. That's what I think criminologists are called to do.
Yeah.
And so that's, you know, once you are kind of in touch with that, I think the rest of it becomes not easier, but more evident. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, yeah, makes 100% of sense. And so just kind of tapping into that, you know, centering yourself and, you know, ensuring that you're loving yourself, etc. Kind of, if you start with yourself, it's easier to commence with your work and the way in which you think and the way in which you ask questions and the way in which you know, helps you develop as a criminologist. So I personally agree with that. You know, I often find personally, it's not about me, but just throwing it out there. I find
it is about you.
Well, to a certain extent, yeah, but I often find, you know, it's a lot easier for me to produce work or think or conjure ideas when my mind is right and when I feel right. I tend not to produce, and I can write a lot better when, you know, I feel wholesome. So that's definitely a great message to kind of send out to people that do want to follow your path. And just wondering if you could just give us a tiny little bit more of a snippet about kind of that book, A Different Justice. So anything that we could expect to read within there.
Yeah, sure. The basic premise of the work is that I asked the question, what would justice look? Because there's this kind of opposite kind of weirdness. I mean, in America, we have done a fantastic job of making an unsystem. We assume that there's a measure of accountability and transformation that comes from a justice intervention, and what we have done is effectively the worst possible thing we could do. I mean, recently, as obviously in the shadow of the George Floyd debacle, police used violence in response to protests, nonviolent protests, about the use of police violence. That's literally the dumbest thing you could possibly do. The prisons that we maintain here in the United States are literally it's akin to someone showing up at a physician's office and saying, I think I have a broken leg. Well, I'm going to give you hepatitis. Now you don't have to worry about your leg anymore, right? We'll make you better by making you sicker. Mm-hmm. So that's what we succeeded in doing. And so my question is, what if we based our justice system on the premise of love, and then kind of examined what love was, and came up with a definition, and then we moved on and examined the implications of that definition in police courts and corrections.
I think that's such an amazing, a really interesting premise. And I'm a very the glass is full kind of person, and I believe in love and loving everyone. So, and that's a great sentiment to be putting forth, and ensuring that, organizations in the criminal justice system as a whole leads by love. That would be, amazing. And if
but it's so much hard. It's hard. It's mighty hard.
Yeah.
That's the mistake, is the assumption is, oh, well, that'll be great. We'll just build prisons made out of pillows. And,
yeah. Well,
that's not what we're talking about.
No.
Right?
No, I completely understand. But I mean, like, the premise of what you're putting forth around about just kind of love as a foundation within the criminal justice system. In an ideal world, that would be amazing. But it's the complexities that sit underneath that and make things a lot more difficult and hard, as you've said. But just moving on. Oh, sorry, that was my pen. Right, apologies. And then just a kind of a final question, just a bit of a roundup. If anyone wanted to make contact with you, how can they go about doing that? Twitter, Facebook, email.
I'm not on Facebook because Facebook is the devil. But I have I'm on Twitter. Of course, my email. I'm at Bridgewater State University's website. I have my cell number. You can call my cell, but Twitter's a great place to get me. I'm DeValve there. I can't be hard to find. And mdevalve at bridgew.edu, and my cell number is probably on.
You've been amazing, and you've that's all the questions I have for you. So just wanted to leave it there and just say thank you very much from myself, Jen, and the CrimiTalk, the wider CrimiTalk team, for engaging with us. And to viewers or listeners, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. If you're interested in doing a brief interview about work that you're doing, please do get in touch. We don't bite. And like I said, like, comment, subscribe, buy us a coffee, anything, and just stay engaged. Thank you.